Hi, welcome to the Heart Wide Open Wellness Podcast. And I am just really touched today. It's a very special start of the podcast. And I have my absolute favorite person in the entire world with me here today. My husband of, oh goodness, here we go. I always forget it. We were married in 2001. And so, yes, math. It's not my specialty. I'm a therapist. And I always forget. So we've been married for a long time. We were together for a couple of years before that and have been on a journey of life together. So this is probably the most raw and real that I am going to get into me and a little bit of how my life has been shaped by this amazing man. And we're also going to learn a little bit about him because he has done some really incredible things. I guess here we go.
Let's go.
You ready for this?
Yeah, let's do this.
And you have done so many beautiful companies, so many beautiful adventures. Share an overview that you got into the Marines and you got your own private pilot's license as well. And then did serve as a Harrier jet pilot for the Marine Corps and ended deciding to do the inactive ready reserve towards the tail end of your career. But you served how many years active duty?
22.
Yeah.
20. No. Active duty was 12 and a half.
12 and a half active duty,
Yeah.
22 total,
Yeah.
which is very, very admirable. And in that course of time, not only were you a pilot flying the Harriers, but you also obtained an MBA from San Diego State, or not San Diego State, University of San Diego.
Yeah.
And gained your EMT license when you got out of the military, that you were going to go into work for the fire. And actually that story is kind of the precipice of thinking you're going one way, right? And then going a complete different area.
Yeah.
And before, I want you to share that, but also we were stationed, so we met and did long distance for a year, right? And so you were in the Marines and I was living in San Francisco and we met at a friend's wedding. And then I was love at first sight. We did the whole thing. I moved and then we had to bounce around. So we were in Arizona, I moved to you. Then San Diego, where you deployed for 8 months.
The whole time we were in San Diego.
1 month after we were married, you were gone for 8 months.
Well, it was 9/11, so
it was 9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that happened, and it was kind of one of those things. And then we moved to Texas after we got out of there, and we had 2 kids there. So this is where I'm going. So we had our first 2 of our 3 boys were born in Texas in Corpus Christi, and we got out of we moved locations and changed our lifestyle with the military at that point. And I think that's a pivotal time. So I just wanted to kind of like share that part. And then, yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember what the original question was, but
well, how did you form?
Yeah.
What did that shape?
So for me, all I had ever known was organized things, like organized sports in high school, organized football and baseball in high school, and then went to college and then joined a fraternity in the college and then joined the Marines while I was in the college. Interesting side note on that, I was actually about to join the Marines out of high school and not go to college. I remember my mom didn't talk to me for 2 or 3 months.
Because you joined without her knowing.
Yeah. And I wasn't even going to go to college. I was just going to go straight into the Marine Corps. And then, so I decided to change my mind. And then Davis was kind of the only place that actually looked at me to play baseball. Like, maybe you can come here. Maybe.
Yeah.
And so I went and played for 5 weeks, 6 weeks and hated it. And just because I was burnt out with the baseball thing. But that was an organized like group. I was in this group thing and then joined the Marine Corps, and it was this big family thing, and there was no real individuality in any of the things that I had done. And then when you were 8 months pregnant with Eli, our first kid, I got sent to Iraq. And when that happened, I got sent as a forward air controller. We were in Kingsville, Texas, where I was an instructor pilot, and then I got sent to Iraq as a forward air controller, which is what I had a side job doing. That's when you and I decided, because you wanted to go to Japan.
I was full in. I wanted to stay in and travel.
You're like, how do we go live in Japan? How do we do all these things? And then when that happened, that changed us completely, because now we saw the writing on the wall. This was 2005, 2004,
Interesting time.
2004, 2005. And then that really kind of set the pace for like, oh crap, this isn't going to be the last time that happens.
Yeah.
So you and I kind of decided, okay, let's not do the Marine Corps active duty anymore. And let's get out. And because there was no individual, I didn't really have any individuality, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I mean, I don't know, you could do a couple different paths. The airlines weren't hiring. The airlines weren't a lifestyle that you and I wanted to choose at that time.
You had been gone so much at that time, and we wanted you home for kids and to build a family.
Yeah, I'd been gone a lot. And so the airlines weren't really realistic, and they weren't hiring because it was this, it's now 2006.
Yeah.
So everybody that I knew was like, hey, you should be a firefighter because it's just like the Marine Corps. So at the same time, I really didn't. I mean, it was like you have a whole world out there in front of you that you could just redefine yourself. I had no idea what to do. So I went at the same time to USD to get the MBA. And then, so the way our schedule worked back then, if you remember, like I would go to the Navy hospital at Corpus Christi and do my EMT classes to become an EMT. Then I'd come home for like 5 minutes, and then I would drive down to Kingsville, and I'd fly 3 times a day, and I'd come home, and you had the baby at the time, Eli.
And he was colicky.
I mean, I don't know what that means, but like,
cried a lot.
He cried a lot. And I would show up, and you'd be like, here you go.
Yep.
And
well, and you were getting your MBA at that time too, so you would
you would leave the house. You just totally left because you had the kid all day, right?
But the best part is I'd come home and you had Eli in the baby Bajorn sitting at the computer with earplugs in, and here he is just sitting there, and you're like typing.
Yeah. So because didn't know what I wanted to do. And then interestingly enough, we got, because of some of my experience in the Marines with some rope stuff, high angle rope rescue and stuff, I flew out to Half Moon Bay, and we got hired at Half Moon Bay Fire.
Yeah.
And
we thought that's where we were going.
Yeah, because the deep ocean, or the ocean, the swim and the high angle rescue stuff, I thought, oh, this would be a perfect fit. We got hired
for Half Moon Bay Fire Department.
And then the end of my active duty came along, and you flew home with. Now we had 2 kids, so we had Matt and Eli. I think
he
Matt
was like
maybe 4 months old.
Yeah, 4 months old. Yeah, that's right.
And you had flown to your parents' house, and I drove with Bob Barker in 2 different U-Haul trailers.
Yep.
Home from Texas, and we were moving to Santa Cruz. And
and houses were so expensive then. Remember that? Like a boom, and we're like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah, because that was 2006.
Yeah.
When the bottom hadn't fallen out yet. Yeah. Fallen out yet. But anyways, halfway here, the battalion chief called and said, hey, just want to let you know the city went bankrupt.
Newsflash.
Yeah, we're going to Cal Fire. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a Cal Fire guy. And he's like, no, you don't have a job. I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah. True.
So
we had a 1 year, almost 1 year, 3 months, and a 4-month-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was
do the math on that.
Not super. Yeah.
I can do that math.
A couple days short of it. But yeah, that right there kind of defined us a little bit, because now you had a pretty successful real estate career in Corpus Christi for the 4.5 years we were there. I mean, it was building too. I mean, it was one of those deals. Yeah, it was great. But you had gone from that to nothing and living at your parents' house with 2 kids.
Well, I was doing network marketing too.
Oh, you were doing network. That's right.
And I was actually doing okay as well. Good, but it didn't survive the move.
Yeah.
Neither did real estate.
Yeah. And then I didn't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that really got me to thinking, like, what am I going to, and again, getting back to this thing where you have a whole world of things out there to redefine your life. Up until then, my life was being a pilot. And
like, what do you do there?
And being in the Marines. and the Marines that lifestyle is such a family.
Yeah.
And it's such a one single focused thing that, like, when you get out and you have freedom to, like, it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
That spent probably at least 7 years of like struggling to try and figure out who I was, like define an identity, and do all that kind of stuff.
You would speak a lot about, like, you find my tribe and my brotherhood, and I mean that really...
it didn't exist in the outside world, and so a lot of those things started to pile up. Then we got hired in. Remember, I drove from Placerville to Redwood City and went to do the fire academy down there, and then eventually got hired in Redwood City, where I had to volunteer for 2 days a week and not get paid, because the way that they hired was as soon as somebody left, you got to be hired. And I realized I didn't want to be a firefighter. And then that's where I got that job in San Francisco. And then
you were just doing what you needed to do to take care of us.
I just needed to put food on the table at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't think I really realized any of my stuff until much later. But yeah, it was still kind of, you're just in the little kid land where, you're just doing what you can to put food on the table. It was a recession, right in the middle of a recession.
We had bought a house that would be unstated income that we really couldn't afford.
Yeah.
And we were holding on tight.
Yeah.
And then we had another child.
Yeah,
we had 3 kids in 31 months, 3 boys.
2.5 years.
Yeah. So then, and then we thought, oh, great, we're going to get out of the military so that you can be home more. We're not going to do the airline so you can be around. And you ended up spending, gosh, it gives me chills. You spent probably 8-10 years either going to the Bay Area or going for 3 weeks at a time to Alaska.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
And you weren't really around you were, because you did every effort, but funny, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the good part about that is we were home for the kids.
Absolutely.
Home at that early age for the kids. So, and I don't think I still even knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But getting into the entrepreneurial thing started to kind of kick in probably 2012, somewhere in there. So, and that was while I was in Alaska.
Yeah, and I think
because I realized that I needed to do something different.
Yeah.
Because the other stuff was bogging me down, I guess is the right way to put it. It was not where I needed to be. It was not where I wanted to be.
Well, sometimes the best way we figure out what we want is by what we don't want.
Yeah,
right? Eliminating.
And pretty miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I know I had some resistance to you going into the airlines from day one when we first met. I kind of was in resistance of having it. I had an idea in my head that if somebody was going to be gone all the time, that would be really challenging to have a authentic relationship and the relationship that I desired, which I've learned is not true, because you've been in the airlines now for how many years?
6.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say it's actually helps our relationship in ways. Of course I miss you when you're gone and the kids, but and you do a fantastic job at being around as much as you possibly can too. So, but when you were in more of a miserable state, and then you decided to go back into the airlines, and that kind of, and I think going to Alaska, if I observed it correctly, one of the upsides of that is you had some time to think. Right. And even in your commutes to the Bay Area, when you were doing the jobs that you didn't necessarily love, you had some space to hear yourself.
Yeah, I think so. So timeline wise, what ended up happening was I had the San Francisco job and I was doing Alaska. The San Francisco job, instead of commuting in 4 days a week, I was kind of down to 1 or 2 days a week.
Yeah, that got better.
So I was working at the house, but that was hard because the office in the house,
3 little kids.
With 3 little kids. And I used to tell you I was working in 5-minute increments. I just got good at working in 5-minute intervals. Because the kids would come in, and that was hard too. We started sensing that job was going to go away. So we did this oil and gas stuff where I went offshore to the Gulf of Mexico, but the majority of it was up to the North Slope in Alaska, where we did 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. So I was up there for 2 weeks, down here for 2 weeks at the house. But when I was here for 2 weeks, I was going into San Francisco. So essentially I had 2 jobs. And when I was on the slope, the San Francisco job would call me and say, "Hey, we need you to come in tomorrow." And then I'd be like, "Man, I can't do that. Just can't." They're like, "Why?" I'm like, "Can't." Because I'm in Alaska. And I can't get home tomorrow. So that was incredibly stressful. But I think the best part about the Alaska stuff was I was around like-minded guys. I had my tribe back because that was the group. It was fighter pilots and Navy SEALs and military guys that were high-functioning military guys in that respect, where they did well in their previous life. And so I got that component back. And a lot of those guys had already kind of meandered into their own into their own entrepreneurial lifestyle. And then I started learning what that is. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started kind of going, okay, I got to do something here. And then, so we did that 838 where we had the contract with the Army Reserve.
Yeah.
Right. And so the San Francisco job ended up going away. Just that business, what do you call it? That business ended up folding, and that was about 2011. And then we couldn't do Alaska anymore. Alaska
was too straining. That was legit. That was the fear of what the airlines would be, which was the airlines. It's not. That was bad,
and it was hard.
Ugh.
It was hard on the kids. It was hard on us. It was hard on me. Hated being up there. So then I started to do the 838 stuff where I just started writing contracts.
Which 838 was your own business that you decided.
The first business that I started, and I just started writing government proposals for contracts and ended up getting a few. And so we did that for a little bit.
Is that a DVBE or DVBE?
Yeah, the disabled veteran business.
Yep.
And all of that knowledge was from all those guys that I met in Alaska. The guidance was kind of, hey, do this, you should do this. Mm-hmm. That was really kind of when it all kicked in. And that was business consulting. That was consulting services, which is hard. And one day, a multi-billion, trillion-dollar defense contractor took a contract that we had away from us. We had a contract with the Army Reserve. Remember that? And then the next day that was done. Yeah. Nine Corps came in and so we had 9 guys working on a project, and then the next day we had none guys. And
none guys.
And then I realized service is too hard. We need to go into products. But then I meandered even more, remember, because then I had to go lizard hunting, and you're
going to have to explain that.
Yeah. And then we found some time.
But lizard hunting was another time where we had a friend who was a surveyor, and he was literally counting lizards on the coast in one of your favorite places in the world, down by San Luis.
Yeah.
And you were able to just have some space. And I remember you saying that you got, and you still do this, like in your commutes, where you'll just turn the radio off, nothing.
Yeah, that was it.
You'll just hear yourself.
That was when I was at Icon. Remember the lizard hunting? Like the contract had gone away, and then I couldn't find another. And then we didn't have another contract.
Yeah,
I think you were brand new at doing the therapy stuff.
Yeah. So meanwhile, in the beginning years that you were explaining, I went back to grad school.
Yeah.
So that when the kids were really young, and you were going actually, I think to Alaska, I was in grad school.
Yeah.
So that was
even harder. Because you're gone, so then I had to be there and doing all. Yeah, mm-hmm. So that was a big balance, huge balance. We did well at that. So like when you went back to school, when I went back to school, you held the fort down. When you went back to school, I kind of held the fort down. We kind of did that.
I would say, babe, that's what we've done really well.
Yeah, I agree.
In general, we're pretty good at that.
Yeah,
supporting each other and taking turns.
Yeah, the lizard hunting was a huge low for me, mm-hmm. and where I was, because that contract had gone, and then you weren't making any money yet because you were doing your hours.
my associate hours, internship hours.
Training hours.
And back then, nobody got paid a dime for that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was working
so
as
we were
many
kind of
hours as
living on
I could. Yeah.
savings for a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude,
and we didn't have a lot of that.
Yeah. And you're like, you've got to go back to work. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't really know what I want to do. I
Yeah.
don't. And then it was miserable because the tribe was now gone again.
Which I don't know what to do. Also, it was important to you, even then, as I love it should have been, to do what you needed to do. It wasn't like you didn't want to just go get a job. You'd done that. Like you were really seeking what was right
I didn't really
for you.
know at the time what ends up kind of will be my advice to everybody. But at the time, it was like I didn't know it, but I needed to do something that fulfilled me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anything. And then like so then
but you knew you wanted that.
I knew I did, but I didn't know that I did.
Yeah.
It was something I didn't identify. But then the lizard hunting came because like I was miserable and I needed to just leave.
Yeah.
Remember that? I just needed to
well, it was a little busy at our house.
It was.
There was a lot going on.
Yeah. And I just needed to go find myself. And the lizard hunting was interesting because I was counting. I don't even remember the name of the lizard. But that's a real thing. Like people actually make a living doing that.
It's actually a fabulous job. I would love to do. I'd go today.
Yeah, it was like 10 or 12 miles a day in the hills.
Sounds wonderful.
Of hiking, and towards the end, I don't think I counted one damn lizard because I was just can't believe I'm walking around looking for lizards, right? Yeah. And so that was about 10 or 12 days worth.
Yeah, it was kind of like your.
It didn't work.
Your walkabout.
Yeah, but it didn't work because then I got a contracting job with PG&E.
Oh, that was horrible. It was really extra bad.
Yeah. Where I had to be in San Francisco again, so I had to drive
It just wasn't your wheelhouse. It wasn't your job. It wasn't your interest. It wasn't.
No. And so then I had the opportunity with Icon Aircraft. So
this started to get warmer. Like
then we started to get warmer. So with Icon, I drove to Vacaville every day, which that was an hour and some change one way, but
closer than the Bay. So
we're getting
and it's the industry that you're interested in.
Yeah, now I'm back flying again, and now I'm doing curriculum, and now I'm building operations and maintenance, and
with your people again.
And I'm kind of sort of with my tribe again. There's some guys I'm hiring that are my tribe. And I'm back with the guys that I want to be with. And then that business, so we were there for 2.5 years, but the last year of that is what you're referring to, where I just knew that wasn't it. You know, still searching, like, I don't really, what the hell am I going to, it sucked. I wasn't happy.
No. And at the time it kind of sucked, but right now I'm just so proud that you never gave up searching. Yeah. Like you didn't just give in. You're like, I'm going to find it.
Yeah. So in the morning on the drive in, no phone calls, no radio, no podcast. I don't think they had podcasts in 14, 15.
Not a lot.
But no nothing. No music, no nothing. And I just spent 1.5 years of driving into Vacaville every day trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And ended up on a pretty good plan. So that's where the business thing kind of really started in earnest.
Well, and you decided to go with Southwest, or you went to SkyWest, and
I wasn't current, so I had to go to SkyWest for 6 months, and that
to become current on your hours to be a pilot,
to be able to get
and
hired.
To be able to be applicable and application accepted.
So if you remember, that was absolutely miserable, and
that was not great.
It was only 6 months, but it was miserable.
Again, that was kind of what I envisioned not being great. And that was the reality, but we knew it was short term at that point, and we were on our way. So that felt really nice.
Well, we spent a lot of time going, what the hell are we doing?
We did. And
I especially did, because that was a brutal intro into the airlines.
And then you got hired by Southwest. And I think that provided a little bit of, okay, I think we've said yes to this. We're going to do this until you pretty much retire from it. Yeah. And it built in a little bit of stability for us, career-wise, financially. At least there's just something that we could lean into. And I think that helped too. So, I think just from, the perspective of needing some basic needs to be met to be able to get into that creative brain and to be able to just kind of step forward towards your entrepreneurial endeavors, you had that foundation a little bit more secure. The kids were a tad bit older. We'd been together longer. We knew how to parent, not necessarily better, you're always learning, but like wasn't new, you know, like, so I got through grad school. So, but that was a lot of stuff to get humps to get over to get to that point. And then
there was also a lot of time, introspective time there.
Yeah.
Like lizard hunting and drives and flights back and forth to Alaska.
Yeah, so you had more information about yourself.
Real miserable times, really.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah. Really spent years at the bottom mentally, just kind of wondering. Yeah.
We've been through so much together. And I guess, like, let's jump forward. Like, what are you doing now? And how has everything that you've experienced, that we've experienced together, shaped you and inspired you to do what?
Yeah. So I think, remember driving back and forth to Vacaville, I was kind of the hour and a half drive thinking about what I wanted to do. And I came up with it, and it was to build products, to make my own product, design company, etc. We're not quite there yet. But I had in my mind kind of a plan, a master plan on how to get there. I knew consulting services business was hard, so I thought let's start a company that does products. Met a guy, my business partner, 10 years ago while meandering. And so he and I started Western Fire Supply. Western Fire Supply sells in California. And you got to remember, we kind of lived through the recession. So you kind of think, well, what's not going away? Well, fire in California is not going away. So we started selling fire equipment, helmets, goggles.
As a disabled veteran business.
As a disabled veteran business, which gives some bit advantage in the state of California and some on the federal side. But so that's what we've been doing for the last 6 years, since 2018, is selling that. Interestingly enough, like my business partner Joe has a little bit of the same ADD in the business space. So we've started a law enforcement uniform shop that sells tactical gear. We're about to start a turnout cleaning business, which is called an ISP. And so he and I kind of mesh really well together. He runs the day-to-day operations, and I kind of run all the background stuff in there. The intent, though, I think, in my mind, is still to get into the product business, where we remember the dog leash thing. We made an entry into that, but it's expensive to build your own products, and you actually have to know people that can do that. So where I'm going mentally in the next couple of years was to be financially stable enough where we could actually support the family, put the kids through college. You and I are good, retirement, all that kind of stuff, but actually make it to the culminating piece of that was to build a disabled veteran business incubator. So a lot of guys from my background are really great at coming up with ideas to make a better mousetrap, and but they don't know how to do it. They don't have the money to do it. They don't have the resources. They don't have the team. They don't have the tribe to do that, right? So so eventually, it's to create this disabled veteran business incubator where you can actually a little Shark Tank, little disabled veteran business Shark Tank kind of thing that may happen eventually. But that's kind of where I kind of would like to be.
Which is so cool, because that's exactly what you would have liked to have been there for you, right? At some capacity.
Exactly. And when I identified that was 2015 when I identified that. So it's 24. That's a long time. And that plan obviously isn't going as fast as I want it to. But, we have kids going to college.
We do.
That kind of thing. And I think it's important too. I mean, to be the entrepreneur, you have to have a strategic plan. I think the meanderingness, I think, doesn't work. So I spent a lot of time kind of trying to come up with a plan, as well as I know that you have too. I mean, I've watched you start. It's a funny story that I think everybody should know, but we're in. I think I was in Alaska, and you called me, and I think the kids were making amazing noise in the background, loud, and you were going crazy. And I think you said, I'm going back to school. And I go, okay, what are you going to do? And you're like, I'm going to be a therapist. And I'm like, what? Because at the time, it just didn't make any sense. And I'm like, and you're like, yeah, and I'm going to go to University of San Francisco, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh shit. Like, I remember thinking that, oh shit.
Yeah.
She's serious. And like, what if she does this for a couple of years and then hates it?
Yeah.
You know, and so we did that, but then I watched you all the way, and I watched you do a couple years worth of pain. You paid your dues, and then started your therapy world. And then I remember again when you're like, I don't want to do therapy anymore. But this is like 10 or 12 years later.
Yeah, and I didn't want, not the industry. I just didn't want to do the
day to day. Yeah, it was hard. It was wearing on you. It was a lot.
I went through 2020, and that was really no joke.
COVID and all that.
Yeah,
the amount of clients that you had was crazy. And
specializing in trauma takes a certain toll too.
Yeah,
I have a lot of respect for the therapists that work.
Yeah, you come home exhausted and all that. But I think that in all of that kind of created your little long-term strategy too, to build the company.
Such a good point, because we both had I almost paused when you say you need to be strategic and not meandering, although it sounds like we both meandered, but we both got to a point where you meander long enough, and that's necessary, I think, for most people. And then, some are lucky to know very young, or right out of the gate. But for us, it just was both. We kind of just meandered, supported each other along the way. But then at one point, it became kind of clear. And then even though it's a little bit messy, it's like organized mess. Like you're on your way. And I think for both of us,
it's definitely not precision. It was definitely, I think the overall plan was there. Yeah. I don't think neither one of us knew how to do it.
No.
Yeah. And the interesting thing there too is I think it kind of fed off each other. Like you kind of watched me, I kind of watched you, you know what I mean? And we kind of did one of those things.
Well, and we've talked about how entrepreneurial business especially, is kind of spiritual journey, but it's definitely
heart wide open journey.
Heart wide open journey, but it's also, it's a personal growth journey would be another more, I guess, layman's term of saying it, that it's a personal growth journey, and that it really asks a lot of you to step towards who you are, because you got to know who you are to do it. So given that we have modeled that for our kids to be kind of entrepreneurial, what advice would you give others who are raising a family, or just taking care of loved ones, or have other obligations while they're trying to pursue entrepreneurial endeavors?
That's a good question. I think accept the grind.
And it's okay if things suck for a while.
Embrace the suck.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Embrace the grind, because I think the biggest thing that a lot of people don't understand is how long it takes to start a business or to do something entrepreneurial. Like everybody looks at it and goes, oh, look how successful, or look how good or whatever's happening. Mm-hmm. But what they don't realize is there's meandering, tribe missing, struggling, lizard hunting times that are behind all the rest of that stuff.
Yeah, right? So true.
And it's like it's one of those deals where it's like, that's when did we get out? 2006. Got out of the Marine Corps in 2006. It's 24.
Yeah.
It's 18 years. Yeah. Math in public, but like that's a long time of trying to figure out like what the hell.
Yeah.
And I would say right now that we're kind of both, I don't want to say hitting our stride, because we're still kind of in the uphill, but it's not. So I think you have to do the hard shit. I think you have to learn how to be disappointed. I think you have to learn how to fail.
And get comfortable with failing.
Get comfortable with failing. Like that's a big one, right? Like failing. How many different things did I try?
Oh my gosh, we used to have the analogy of just throwing a spaghetti against the wall, right?
I mean,
and something's going to stick.
Literally tried probably 5 billion things and failed at all of them.
Yeah.
So you're going to fail. It's going to suck. It's hard. Don't quit.
And you won't know where you're going.
And you may not
sometimes know
where you're going to go. Yeah. It's hard.
The other thing I'd add to it, and this one came up recently, is I agree with you. Like we've both grown a lot. We've learned a lot. And
we taught the kids that too. They're going to fail.
Oh yeah.
That's another thing that
they're not afraid to fail as much as like we were when we were their age.
Don't care.
No. So grateful for that.
Great. Yeah.
Recently we were talking about something and I was pointing out, well, this is struggling and this is a struggle and this is a struggle. And you reflected back to me, and I'm so grateful that you did. You're like, I think you're just about ready to up level. You're just ready to break through to a new level. And I feel like that has been something too that I would just, for advice, I wish I would have known that sooner. And now I realize that there's like chaos. Yeah. It gets really chaotic right before you step up to the next rung on the ladder, so to speak.
Not necessarily chaotic as well as, I should add scary.
Chaotic, scary things. Yeah.
You want to quit?
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, if you just
doing it wrong,
if you embrace the suck, if you stay in the grind, then you find yourself like the clouds start to clear and you go, okay, here we are.
Remember we were talking the other day too about it's just this life is just one problem solving session after another. Yeah. That's all you're doing.
Yeah. And if you can
you
kind
just
of wrap your head around that
it's that stoic mentality too, where it's like, it's not good. It's not bad. It just is. Just keep driving.
Explain how maybe that idea of it just is, like that's important to you. Okay, you've taught me a lot about that. Just like a little stoicism in the sense of, I really understand that, and I think there's a lot of value to not get too attached to the good or too attached to the bad, and just keep going, and to not judge or take it personally either way.
Yeah. I'm a beginner
stoic.
Right?
I did buy you a journal and a book for it.
You did. Mm-hmm. And I don't do well at those journaling things. My understanding of the way Stoics believe is like, there's neither a good or a bad. It's just, it is.
Yeah.
And if you can kind of create your thinking that way, then it takes a lot of the peaks and valleys out of your emotional state. And I think you're a lot steadier in a business sense if you just understand that. And sure, there's maybe good days and maybe there's bad days. But if you could just look at those good days and bad days and go, it just is, and it just is, it levels out the peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because when you level out the peaks and valleys, you can still drive to your target. Yeah. 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 It's not as devastating emotionally when something bad happens, or if whatever negative thing happens, it's not as devastating. It just is. It was just a thing. It just happened.
Yeah, it just happened.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a high level surrender. It's high level acceptance. Yeah.
That was a taught in the Marine Corps too. Like, right. Like that's a, for me, years back thing where it was like, if the airplane breaks, the airplane breaks. And deal with it. Right?
That's kind of extremely simple.
You got to just deal with it. It doesn't, it's not, you can't get excited. You can't get,
it's just broke. You got to fix it.
Yeah. You got to deal with it.
Problem solving opportunity.
It's another problem solving opportunity.
Yeah.
So, and the Harrier broke all the time.
Yeah.
So we got good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say just fortunately knock on something that, having a partner allows, like, when yours is broke and you can help pick me up, and when I'm broke, we can kind of like take turns and tag team a little bit in that way. So that's, but when we're both down at the same time, that's hard too. So just the reality of it, but when we're both up, it's also really fun to celebrate. So I am so grateful for you on the journey, and I would love to share more about
likewise
what you've experienced, and thank you. And we'll do that. I'm sure that there's, this is a great just overview of just who you are, us. I want to circle back to one thing though, because it's important to me, and I feel like the community, the tribe, one thing I learned doing individual therapy was, and I partially got into therapy for many reasons. One of them was I did my own work finally about some things, some trauma, my own trauma.
Yeah.
and it needed to be dealt with. And I am very transparent about, when you have kids, you want to heal as much of yourself as you can as quickly as possible, so you don't pass that down to the most precious little souls, right?
Yeah, they're sponges.
Yeah, they are. And we both took that pretty seriously. Like, we have to do our work. So when I was doing my work, I realized, I love this work and I want to give this gift to others. And I thought it was going to be this individual journey and end there. And it turned out that what I learned was that I did my individual work, and then I realized that parlays into our relationship, and then that parlays into my friendships, into family relationships, into bigger relationships. And it also, in working with individuals, I realized that same for them, right? Like I could do individual work with them, but then it also benefited them to be in community, in groups, and support of like-minded individuals. And that's very much something that's really important to me too.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, I guess, just support that, I didn't really have the community that you had in the same way. Like, I had friendships for sure and support for sure, but didn't have what I would call a tribe. And I feel like that is something that you have taught me to not only recognize, but to have it be an important aspect. And it's kind of an integral part of my business, actually.
Yeah. With your retreats and the women's, and your women's groups. And you're building your tribe. Yeah. You really are.
Yeah. And it feels so good.
Yeah. It's an important, there's a lot of guys that leave the military, and probably I would say law enforcement or first responders or something like that can probably relate to that feeling of tribe and a lost tribe if you lose it.
Yeah.
I don't think, I said to you the other night, I was like, my tribe is dotted all over the U.S. They all live all over the United States right now, just because of the nature of getting out of the Marine Corps and all that. But you're building a really cool little tribal community that is, I don't know if people talk about it enough, that is super important.
Yeah.
Right? Like, having a tribe and having a group of people that aren't all like-minded, or they may be all like-minded or whatever.
Yeah. And they don't, right.
But it's
right, either or.
It's a comfort zone. It's your people.
Well, we're just meant to do life together, right?
Yeah. It's not
bigger
you
than
can't do it by yourself.
One individual. Yeah.
So it's a super cool thing that you're building that tribe. And it's growing, and it's fun to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun to do it together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I thank you. I love you.
Love you too.
And
you can't cry.
I know. I know. It makes me emotional a little bit.
Well, I'll come back and then make you cry more.
Okay, perfect. Let's do that.
Okay.
All right. So I would, I think there's a lot of aspects of what you've shared today that we could dive deeper into. And so I'll look forward to doing that. We'll do that together.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to the Heart Wide Open Wellness Podcast. For more information, subscribe to our newsletter at heartwideopenwellness.com and follow us on social media at Heart Wide Open Wellness.